Let's talk about Apple. Philip Elmer DeWitt's here. This is the time. Apple did two things. They said on Thursday their quarterly results came out. The best quarter, record quarter, did great. Don't count on next one. Explain this. Philip, you're muted. I don't know if that's us or you.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's always a record quarter.
Yeah, I knew it would be a record quarter. Now, does this include iPhone 14? It does, doesn't it?
5 days of iPhone 14.
So just a slice. So it's really the next quarter, which is their Q3?
Q1.
Q1 is the big quarter.
This was Q4. They ended their fiscal year at the end of September, and what we got was the results for that. So we got the quarterly results and the annual results. Can I ask the tech guys to pull up the chart for one of the charts I sent shows what Apple did compared to the other tech companies.
Yeah, because this was a bad time for tech companies. Here's the performance from PED30.com.
There you go. This came from the Wall Street Journal. There's Meta that lost a quarter of its value in one day. One of my subscribers who he says, I should have shorted it the day he changed the name because I knew he was panicking, and then I finally shorted it just before the earnings. I shorted it at 135 and it went down to 99. So the guy made a bunch of money betting against this thing. And
look at these steep declines. Look at Amazon.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Amazon went down.
Look
13%.
at Alphabet. And then Apple, which is exactly the opposite, is slow decline and then suddenly a jump.
What you're seeing is the money pouring out of those other three companies and into Apple. They needed some place to go. And it was only Apple's second best one-day gain. In January, they had another big pop.
And that was after they announced their results.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But explain to me, because I do not buy tech stocks, and for good reason. As a journalist, I don't want to have a dog in this hunt. And I have some interest in the stock market, but I'm not an expert. Explain to me, the tech companies had a big boon in COVID, right? They all did great. Yeah. Isn't this just somewhat of a correction after this growth? Are they below where they were before COVID?
You'd have to look at individual stocks. Apple is down for the year.
I know Meta is. Meta's $700 billion off its peak.
they $800 billion evaporated. Someone called it the greatest destruction of capital in a long time. But
by the way, I would point out if you did short them, execute, because they're making a long bet. Meta's saying, look, we know the social's dying. They're agreeing with what we said last break. We know the social's dying. We think the metaverse is the next big thing, and we're going to pour all our energies into that. If they're right, it's like it's just a startup. You're buying low what could be the biggest company of 2028.
A couple things. Jim Cramer was on and literally cried, apologizing for having believed in Facebook. And he said, when I found out how much they were spending on Meta, I thought there was an adult there that could control this, but they're just out of control. So this is an influential guy, the most influential guy on CNBC, which all the investors watch, and he's saying, tearfully that I screwed up.
Let me answer my question, because I have the Alphabet stock. Valentine's Day 2020, right before the pandemic, they were at their peak for the last many years of $76. Pandemic, they go down to 53. They've climbed back. This was, of course, the pandemic was very, very good to Alphabet. They've dropped since, but they're still well above their pre-pandemic peak. They're at $101. So this is what I say $96.58. This is what I say when people say, "Oh, they're tanking," is, well, they're just recovering from what was a big run-up because of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's true. What's scary about Facebook and Alphabet is that the cloud numbers are going down. It looks like they bet on the cloud, and the investment in the cloud seems to be
Amazon's
shrinking.
eating their lunch, right?
Yeah.
Is that what's really happening?
Amazon Web Services also
is it down as well?
Yeah.
But again,
so, anyway,
I think you have to look at historic. Now, here's historic 5 years for Facebook, and yeah, they're well below their peak before the pandemic, which is $214. They're down to $99.
They screwed the pooch.
They're done.
Yeah.
They're done. They're cooked, at least for short term. I wonder if Amazon... Did Amazon give their results this week?
Yeah, it was Friday morning, I believe.
Okay, so they're still above... Well, okay, that's interesting. So they're right at their peak pre-pandemic. Their peak pre-pandemic was 104. They're now 103. So they look at, I mean, this devil's mountain here. It's COVID, right? But it was inevitable that this wouldn't last forever.
Right, and that's what was impressive about Apple. Despite they got pushed up with COVID as well as everybody else, and they've managed with, the iPhone sales are down a bit, services are down a bit, but they've got so many cylinders going that they, I don't know, it's like printing money. Can we show another chart that I offered? It was the mountain of cash.
They have as much cash as they've ever had now, right?
No.
Oh no.
They made a commitment. Remember in 2016?
They've been buying back stock.
That Trump was going to let them repatriate all the cash that they had overseas.
Yep, for
all that
reduced
Irish money.
Tax bill. Yeah.
Yeah, so they started bringing their cash back and buying. They're all, everybody who works for Apple, and especially the chief people, have a lot of stock. And if they got dividends, they'd have to pay taxes on it. But if they buy back stock, they don't pay taxes.
I should point out, some say, I don't know, again, I plead ignorance, that buying back stock is in a way inflating the stock because you're reducing the pool of shares out there.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite. It's making each share of stock represent a larger part of the company. It's deflation, I guess.
Okay, well,
you end up with more valuable stock.
Okay,
if they buy it back. So it doesn't make that much.
Let me put it this way: you're artificially improving your stock price by buying back stock.
That's right. That's right. And the argument is, if you have all this money, can't you find something better to do with it? Invest it in new products and do some research, something. And IBM made the mistake of, rather than investing in the future, buying back their stock, and it hurt them. They're a shadow of their original selves. Apple, they've got some very smart people, smart money people managing this. And I have to laugh when I watch the analysts, second guessing Tim Cook. They have no idea what he's.
No, and that's why I say very clearly, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Missing, by the way, in this chart of companies is Microsoft, and I was peeking at their earnings this week, and they also took a hit, but not as badly as everybody else. They kind of went halfway because Apple gained, right? But Microsoft took a smaller hit than most of these other companies.
Pre-pandemic peak for Microsoft, 185. Yeah. They're now 235. So they're up almost 30%.
They're a very well-managed company. And they've found their new feet.
Well, Microsoft is great. If you look at the stock price over the total history of the stock going back to 86, was very flatline for a decade, from 2000 to maybe 2015, just flat.
Although in 2000 it looked pretty darn good. I mean, in retrospect, that doesn't look like much, but that was a good.
But
year.
Look what's happened since Satya Nadella and the focus on Azure and the cloud, which has, I think, been a very smart move in pandemic. Yeah, they're down a little bit now. There's a little bit of a recovery.
Put Apple up. Put Apple up over.
Oh, I have all of them here. Let me see. Here's Apple. Let me do the max again for the full lifetime of Apple. And ignore this. I don't know even what that. But starting in 2008, they've been steadily climbing. It was really right about
steady.
Here.
It gets hit.
It's up and down
periodically.
Up and down. Yeah.
It gets hit worse. Like Microsoft was a smoother curve than this. I can't really understand it, but it's like people fall out of love with Apple, or they find it's
I'll tell you what it is.
Apple is doomed.
I tell you what it is. And by the way, I should behind the scenes. Philip asked me to join your crowd. You have some sort of broad thing you do, and I didn't understand that they were all Apple investors. So I'm joining and I'm going, there's no way this company has a few. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was really the cheese in their gruel. But I understand.
That was a fun show, Leo.
I enjoyed it.
I appreciate it.
But I understand that what from the outside happens periodically, and I'm the poster boy for this, is you go, well, they've saturated. They couldn't possibly find anywhere else to grow. And they consistently make me wrong. Now they've done it with services, right? You're right. They can't sell any more iPhones. They're going to sell the same number every year from now on, but they're making money in services. This quarter, though, service is not so hot.
Yeah, I have to correct you about iPhones. They're growing market share while the others are losing.
So that's where their growth comes from, is people stopping Android and going to
right.
Apple.
They have except in the U.S. they have a small market share everywhere else in the the world.
Yeah, there's potential.
So there's
outside
plenty.
the US.
There's space to grow, and the watches. It's unbelievable. I was at a hoop shoot with girls and boys. 6 to 13, and half the girls had Apple Watches. Where's that at?
Yeah. That's the trick for Apple, right? They've got to find new product categories because, there's growth potential, and China kind of saved their bacon for the last few years because suddenly that market took off. But at some point, you sell an iPhone to everybody who's ever going to buy an iPhone. You're not going to have that same kind of growth. You want to find the next big thing. And it turned out watches, which at first were really kind of laggard, has turned out pretty well for them. Notice I'm wearing
Leo,
the $800 Ultra.
Yeah, mine there. Yeah.
Leo, it's a monopoly. They have a monopoly. On the Apple ecosystem, and to the extent that you're bought into it, you will. They've got you.
They got me for life.
And
yeah. Which I hate, but it's true. It's a walled garden. I love it and I hate it. But it's a walled garden. Devendra, are you captive to the Apple?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm not reviewing phones and stuff anymore, but certainly once I started with smartphones, like the Apple ecosystem made the most sense. iPad was always the best. Like, forget about Android tablets. Oh my God, for the past decade. If you wanted anything decent, the Apple ecosystem made the most sense. And now I can imagine why parents would be buying young kids Apple Watches. My daughter is 4 now, but when she's 6 or 7, when she's going to school, having a lifeline to her, being able to see where she is, that is something a lot of people would really be interested in having. So I can imagine that's being super successful. I'm also getting more into like car tech and stuff these days. And I can clearly see like why there have been all those rumors about Apple and car stuff, because that is a whole platform where Apple is basically partnering with companies now, but having a total solution or having something with more of the Apple branding on it, that would also be another huge hit for them. So yeah, I'm in the ecosystem, and we'll see how far it goes.
So they do need another product, right? I mean, services have been good. Services wasn't that good this quarter. Why do you think that was, Philip?
I think it was a tough compare. It had grown enormously the year before.
It's hard to sustain levels of growth like that year after year after year.
Yeah, it was the pandemic growth.
And, there you go. So, and Apple's facing some headwinds on the biggest profit center in their services, which is the App Store.
Yeah. Well, there was some serious activity in Congress to crack down on Apple and take some of the APIs away.
EU as well. All over the world.
EU can get stuff done. Congress, it turns out, cannot. So that thing died. I have to add one theory I have about Facebook. The next product that we're supposed to get, according to Bloomberg, it's coming in the spring, are these goggles. I have a very hard time seeing goggles as an Apple product. It just doesn't seem to have the mass market.
Well, I felt that way about the card too. Actually, I was very surprised to hear you say you think the card, Devendra, is a is a good.
I'm just looking at like what's ahead too, and also, hey, AR glasses. I just tried out the Magic Leap 2. Remember Magic Leap?
Yeah.
And how much money they raised?
Yeah.
Their new headset is actually pretty good, but because of all the bad word of mouth, like nobody's taking that company seriously anymore. So
have you tried? I bought the. I'm embarrassed to admit, the $1,600 Quest Pro.
I haven't tried them yet. We reviewed it in Gadget, and our viewers like, it's good. It's a good headset. I don't know who it's for. The bet on that market seems weird and maybe out of place, but the idea of having maybe something you slip on, or maybe even your own current glasses that could extend your displays, maybe when you're actually sitting at your
I love
desk,
that idea.
That is a really interesting
idea.
idea.
It's hard to do, though, isn't it?
It's hard to do, but it does seem like the Quest Pro is doing it pretty well. This is like a 5-10 year problem, but the stuff I've seen, like the Magic Leap 2 stuff, and even a bit of the HoloLens too, like it can be magical. The question is, who is it for? Will people actually want this? It still seems more like of an industrial trend, like not really what Apple tends to do. Like they are far more consumer focused, but I could see it being a thing eventually, at least for some people.
Glasses for sure. If they could make the glasses, that look like this, that would be a great product.
The Quest Pro.
My theory about the goggles is I just can't see it as an Apple product. I can't see it this spring. I have this theory that they're doing it to drive Facebook nuts.
Somebody has to.
Don't kick them when they're down. That's mean.
I think they may have no intention of doing what
that's a really interesting theory.
Bloomberg says they're going to do, and Meta just keeps pouring money into the project. The reviews of the people who actually went in that space where they don't have legs and you bump into
Horizon World,
and they're mostly kids.
Yeah,
that looked like such a loser.